The 2024 NFL regular season has come to a close, and this sure was an eventful one. Full of heartbreak, narratives being reinforced with carbon plating, and expectations not being met on a historic level. Only 14 teams can make the playoffs, and today I want to talk about the 18 that came up short in this endeavor. I'm Nick Bolas, and this is the NFL season in review. Let's start with the Jets, shall we? You guys were supposed to be Super Bowl contenders, and look at where you ended up. But should we really be surprised about this? Because I can't think of anything they did this previous offseason to actually make themselves better. No, letting go of Zach Wilson doesn't count. Despite adding 3 veteran offensive linemen to the roster, that offensive line was a disaster still, which looked worse as Rodgers can't move like he used to after tearing his Achilles the previous year. It also seemed like Rodgers never had any chemistry with his receivers until the reunion with Davante Adams. But that tends to happen when you throw some pretty horribly underthrown balls and then blame the receiver for the ensuing interception. Stay classy, Aaron. Now that defense. Good lord. I don't think I've ever seen a top 10 defense fall off a cliff so fast, and I watched the last 3 years of the Zimmer era in Minnesota. The Jets' defense makes that fall from grace seem like a parachute glide in comparison. With all that talent too, that does go to show you can have all the talent in the world, but if there's no synergy, you're going to have problems. But I think it's clear that that isn't the whole story. Firing Robert Saleh after only 5 games, well 2 and 3 during what was only a 2-game slide at the time, set this team down a horrible path. A defense that hadn't surrendered 20 points to start the season, remember Rodgers threw a pick 6 against the Vikings, was suddenly surrendering over 20 points on the regular. It was a horrible decision that only guaranteed the fate of the Jets. Had they kept Saleh, I bet they would be like the Bengals of this past season. A horrible start of the season where they somehow managed to fight tooth and nail to have a chance at the playoffs, but growing impatience and a lack of meeting expectations led to a hasty decision to make a change. While I say that, I don't think they would have made the playoffs. Even Saleh couldn't overcome some of Rodgers' poor decision making on the field, but it would have been closer and they wouldn't have had a top 10 draft pick. If there's one perfect way to summarize your seaseason, it's being 4-11, blasting music from a boombox while walking out on the field. All the while, Josh Allen is smiling and watching you as he knew he was going to destroy your dysfunctional franchise that day. The Bears are who I thought they were. I really wish I would have made a video saying how much it bothered me that I had to constantly hear about how the Bears would be near the top of the NFC North, contending for the division at the start of the year while saying the Vikings are an 8-win team at best. Well, that'll age like a fine milk. And look at where the Bears are now. Another top pick, and yet again, still in the basement. Y'all are gonna ruin Caleb Williams, just like you did to Mitch Kissintitties and Justin look how good his highlights are Fields. You've done this 3 times in a row now where you've drafted QB just to fire the head coach that drafted him. You know what the definition of insanity is, right? Granted, Eberflus needed to go. Realistically, that defense was the best thing about you all year, as Caleb was never gonna succeed behind that offensive line. In fact, calling it an offensive line is accurate, because it's offensive to linemen across the league to be compared to this squad. Your rookie quarterback is going to develop if you have him throwing 30-yard deep routes when he has only 2 seconds to decide what he's doing with the football. He's lucky he's athletic, otherwise he would have made David Carr's rookie season look like a tea party compared to D-Day. Even despite that O-line, all I heard before this season started was to look at all the weapons Williams has, he's in the best situation a rookie could be. So let's look at them, shall we? We got aging Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, which, yeah, he's still a good receiver, and then rookie Rome Odunze, who was supposed to light up the stat sheet this year, although 700 receiving yards is really good for a number 3 receiver. But these guys are the only ones he can seemingly throw to, as they make up over 2,400 yards of his 3,500 passing. Rather disappointing for a guy who's supposed to be the Bears' first 1,000-yard passer this year. That's right, everyone was saying he was supposed to do it this year. Best way to summarize this season? Burning time with 40 seconds left on the clock, in field goal range to lose to an extremely vulnerable Lions team on Thanksgiving. On to the Patriots, who are a professional football team apparently. They beat the Bengals and it was just downhill from there. The defense would show up, except when they didn't. As for the offense, at least they have something to look forward to with Drake May. They just need to get him some receivers because it seems like the tight ends are the only thing for him to target. But Stevenson seems to be the bell cow, so they got a guy that can take pressure off of Drake May. They can certainly get their guy early in the draft if they don't go defense to continue patching those holes. Honestly, I really don't have much to say about this team, as I didn't pay attention to them all year long. So, best way to summarize this season? Beating the Jets just to lose to the Titans the very next week. I feel like you guys lost Tua for 2 months and still somehow managed to stay in it long enough to need both the Bengals and Broncos to lose a game for you guys to even get that 7 seed. And honestly, like the Bengals, you definitely did not deserve it. There were times even with Tua that your offense just looked lost. Just look at that game against the Packers on Thanksgiving. I really would have liked to see this team play with Tua all year long to see where they would have been, but it just wasn't meant to be. As good as that second half rally was, the bad start to the year was your doom. How to summarize your season? Concussion protocol. Now just pray everyone doesn't leave. You guys really did the exact same thing against the Chiefs that the Bears did against the Lions the day after, didn't you? And just like the Bears, while the rest of your division is fighting for playoff spots, you're gonna get a top 10 draft pick. The worst part is running games towards the end of the season to ruin your draft placement. Even if it really doesn't matter if you develop the guy you draft, you just might not get the guy you wanted. Alright, everyone had you taking Shador. He'd be a perfect fit as your existence in Vegas is just a tourist spot. Maybe even Dion will come and coach your team from 4-13 to 8-9 while winning Coach of the Year for some godforsaken reason. Just a horrible year overall. An offense that would be explosive or non-existent. Meanwhile, their defense mostly just seems to be Max Crosby. Maybe a strong offseason will make you guys slightly better, but that's a tough hill to climb given the AFC West. Best way to summarize the season? An illegal shift penalty on what was initially called a false start. You guys almost did it. If it wasn't for the Broncos playing a high school JV squad, you would have been in the playoffs. Would have been easily the worst defense in the playoffs, but let's ignore that and focus on the fact that Joe Burrow was having an MVP season if it wasn't for their record. You guys were basically out of the playoffs in week 8, but you just had to give your fans hope. You had to make it close enough that you had to rely on Carson Wentz winning a football game in 2025. Ah well. You guys got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to think about this offseason, making a crucial decision on who you want to pay the big bucks for to have Joe Burrow throwing to them. But after that, your sole focus should be on fixing your quote-unquote defense. I know it's not what made it bad, but Jesse Bates leaving this team set the defense down a death spiral that they haven't recovered from. Season summary, Joe Burrow throwing for 1 billion yards and 70 touchdowns, just to lose 515 to 516. You guys sold your soul to the devil, and now you're paying the price. It wasn't that long ago you were inches away from playing the Bengals in the AFC Championship game, and now you can pick your QB of the future, but you're gonna commit to your awful mistake, aren't you? Saying Deshaun Watson hasn't panned out is an understatement in itself. At least with the Herschel Walker trade, the Vikings got a player with a great work ethic that they just didn't use properly. Watson has just been garbage when he does play, to the point the offense wasn't even entertaining or able to put up 20 points until the first win with famous Jameis at QB. To continue to keep Watson on the roster would just be the Browns not being able to accept the fact that they made a mistake and letting it go. You can restructure all day, but he does nothing for you but eat money, so cut your losses and do your best to damage control. You also need to hope your defense can return to form, as they're another defensive unit that has fallen from grace, and the offensive struggles just really haven't helped them at all. I like Stefanski, and I was rooting for y'all when Baker won this franchise its first playoff game, but your front offense and a very loud minority of fans have villainized this team nearly beyond repair. That's really all there is to say about this dumpster fire. It's very rare that a team that changed its starting quarterback every couple of weeks makes the playoffs, and the Colts were definitely not the exception. Bouncing between Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco did not allow you to get into a rhythm. I wanted to say you wasted good defensive performances, but on closer inspection, your losses were when the defense didn't show up and the offense couldn't pick up the slack. The exception being the 16-10 loss to the Packers. You were another team that could have been one of those teams playing for a playoff spot week 18, but losing to the Giants week 17 was the nail in the coffin. Really? You guys gave up 45 points to the fucking Giants? Good lord. That's your season in a nutshell. Not surrendering 50 to the Lions, but surrendering 45 to the fucking Giants. What did you guys do? What football god did you decide to piss in the cereal of? Between Trevor Lawrence's struggles to develop and his injury making it more difficult, I don't know what you do to repair this team. I think a coaching change is the best thing you can do. Set this team on the right track and get a fresh start, and you already fired Doug Peterson. Good for you guys. Anyways, they got an absolute stud in rookie Brian Thomas. This offense can explode, they just need to find some direction. Ignore the Vikings and Lions games. Really wish I had more to say about this team, but they're just so bad. Summarizing this season, losing 12-7 against the Vikings after Darnold threw 3 picks. The Titans are a team that needs to find an identity. That offense can explode out of nowhere before completely disappearing, leaving you scratching your head at their inconsistency. They displayed the fact that they're so inconsistent and that the Jags have a defense when they only managed to score 6 points in a 4-point loss. At the same time, your defense doesn't exist, being one of the worst in yards and scoring. They can defend the pass pretty well, but when you're surrendering about 150 yards a game, why bother throwing it? They're also bad at creating turnovers, which makes their offense turning the ball over doubly as much a lot worse. Where do you go from here? Probably the same path as the Jaguars. Change things around on the coaching staff, and hope that the front office can work some magic in the offseason to get that offense to its max potential and fix that patchwork defense. How to summarize your season? 4 straight weeks of Will Levis memes to start the season. How about them Cowboys, huh? McCarthy continues to show why his hiring looks questionable, and even before Dak's injury, you guys were getting blown out by the damn Saints at home. I mean, after that, you did have some good wins, mostly against bottom-feeding teams that made you think you had a chance in the playoffs, but your dysfunction was running at peak Cowboys this year. We can sit here and make excuses about injuries, if you want to be told that's no longer an excuse given how both the Rams and the Lions have played this season with their litany of injuries that they had. Added to that, you have Cooper Rush showing that he can be a serviceable backup, he just can't perform against top teams. That defense, which is supposed to be the brightest spot on this team, had its own struggles, injuries playing a part in that, but let's think critically here. When you have Mike Zimmer coaching against modern offenses, you are going to struggle, and that is a guarantee. Watch his defenses during his last couple of years in Minnesota, and they would just surrender big plays like they were told they'd be sacrificed to Fran Tarkenton if they didn't. Going all in has never looked so bad, with Gilmore playing at a good level in Minnesota. Speaking of Minnesota, do you guys really want to run our 2017 roster? Dalvin Cook, Linval Joseph, and Eric Kendricks? I mean, shit. You guys had Anthony Barr at one point. Then there's Andrew Booth Jr. bouncing between the practice squad and the active roster. It was going to take a miracle for this team to play as well as they did a year ago, and you did not get that miracle. How to summarize your season? Being outscored by over 200 points in your home stadium during your all-in year. So, how have you guys been sleeping with Saquon balling out in the Eagles? Obviously, paying Daniel Jones and not Saquon was clearly the play. This offense really has nothing going for it. I mean, I guess Malik Neighbors, he has been good, but I do remember a lot of people saying he was going to be like Chase and Jefferson and break a lot of rookie receiving records. Hitting over 1,100 receiving yards is nothing to scoff at, but yet again, we have a rookie everyone is hyping up, not meeting that really high expectation. He'll be good, but please temper yourselves, he's on the Giants. If there's anything positive to say, a bright spot on this team is that defense. They are still a tough unit to play against. That front 7 is an absolute nightmare, but not too much to be excited about in the secondary. Even if a good front 7 will always make up for it, those holes will show eventually, and they did this year. Fingers crossed for Cam Ward in a secondary this offseason. How to summarize your season? Daniel Jones not scoring a touchdown in MetLife in almost 2 years. You guys beat the 5-12 Bears 6-3. That's the summary of your season. I'm just going to start with that right away. That offense was surely something. They could march their way up and down the field at will, or they will shoot themselves in the foot before the drive can even get going, kill it right then and there. But what about your defense? Well, they're just as boom or bust. They can play out of their damn minds, or let Darnold make a statement win against them. Back to the offense, Geno might not be it. He didn't write back, and he won't let you forget it. He'll be talking about it, making sure that you forget about his poorly timed turnovers. Won't explain why you stopped running the football with Kenneth Walker even though he's feasting. You guys had it. You almost had it. But divisional losses and a loss to the Panthers were your downfall. At least you guys didn't lose to all the NFC North teams, so it against the Bears is a plus. I was holding out for you guys to win this division, because I did not like the possibility of the Vikings running into the Rams or the Seahawks in the playoffs. Call it PTSD or something. I do love seeing Kyler continuing to develop as a starter, Fixing his turnovers would make his game even better though. You could say that about the offense as a whole, having 20 plus turnovers on the year, making a negative turnover differential. Overall, the team is the middle of the road at the moment, being in the middle of the pack for points scored and surrendered, giving up nearly as many yards and points as they got themselves. They literally were just the middle of the pack. Is Jonathan Gannon the answer? He's goofy. But he might be. You just need Kyler to keep taking steps forward and that defense to lock down. Summarizing your season, the Panthers ending your season by scoring 36 points. I can't tell if this is like the 2021 season where the team was destroyed by injuries just a year after making the Super Bowl, or if this is really where the Shanahan Super Bowl window is closed. That offense fell apart with the running back after running back getting injured, and then Brandon Ayuk getting paid just to disappear. The man had a single 100-yard game all season, all the while Juwan Jennings has been eating. Sometimes holding out does nothing for you but put a target on your back. What a shame. Better to earn it than to fight for it. On top of that, that defense might finally be crumbling, surrendering over 20 points more than they managed to score this year, ending near the bottom in points allowed and struggling to create turnovers. Even with all that, they still managed to somehow be in the top 10 in yards gained. Perhaps they can take a high draft pick and rebuild this team, using the offseason to get healthy. I just don't know about CMC. Summarizing your guys' season, the running back magic running out on the 7th stringer. Somehow, some way, this was nearly a playoff team. Cousins not performing after recovering from his injury held this team back for so long, but the inconsistency on defense did not help. They could play some really good games against, you guessed it, bad teams, but a playoff team would dominate them on all fronts. If there's any consolation, you made it difficult for the Bucs to win the division by beating them twice, but it was really their division to lose. Hold your heads up though, you got Penix to look forward next year, and hopefully the defense takes more steps in the right direction. Next time, just don't lose to the Saints. Season summary for you guys, Kirk Cousins not sharing his Colts cast with Michael Penix. Dennis Allen drove this car off a cliff. That's really all that needs to be said. They started the year off really strong, but were slowly revealed as frauds, and then the injuries just made it worse as the season went on. At least you guys were good at blowing out dog water teams. The only teams the Saints managed to beat with more than 5 wins were the Cowboys and the Falcons. Divisional games can be weird. Firing Dennis Allen was long overdue. Not much more to be said from me. Your season is summarized by getting shut out by the Packers in prime time. And finally, we have the Panthers. At least you guys have your first round pick? At least Bryce Young balled the fuck out to end the season? Get that guy some help and some competent coaching, he could turn out better than Kyler. He could ball out and look amazing, but he could also maintain the trend of playing horribly more consistently than not. I genuinely hope that doesn't happen though. I want guys who go to bad situations to turn things around and show that they're better than the situation that they've been put in. Go fix that defense, keep building up young, and at the very least you'll have a start. Because the Panthers did play some pretty close games. They didn't just make divisional games close either, as they went toe-to-toe with some playoff teams, including the Chiefs. Canales has shown himself to be a good quarterback whisperer, playing both a role in Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield's resurgences. So keep building on that. Summarizing your year, you lost a lot, but you have a good base. Just build off of it. So that's it for the NFL teams that didn't manage to make it to the playoffs this year. Did your team not make it to the playoffs? I'd love to hear your grievances in the comments if they didn't. Otherwise, I'll be getting to the teams that made it in the playoffs after the Super Bowl, but until then, I've been Nick Ballas, and thank you for watching.